Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is my first video of this pattern or in this genre where I'm going to talk about how bedroom musicians and bedroom producers like me face some issues regarding their mixes, especially when it comes to the round bottom end. And I've recently come across a plugin which is sadly not free, but it is Wavesfactory's Trackspacer, and I've been using it for the past few weeks now, and the way my mixes are translating, it's much better than what I'd usually do. Now, in my mixes, to bring out the kick and the bass together, I would usually go for sidechaining. And now, what is sidechaining? I can make a video on it later on because that is one of my go-to process while making a mix. More, if you want to know about what sidechaining is, just leave a comment below, or you can find videos on YouTube. There are innumerable videos on YouTube about sidechaining. Now, I'm using Studio One 4. And this plugin can be used on any DAW that you are using. And without further ado, let's go on to the video. Okay, what we have here is this track, which is a royalty-free track that I had downloaded. What we've got here is a kick, a sub bass. I'm sorry, it just should be here. Okay, a kick, a snare, a drum loop, clap, tambourine, a sub bass, a saw bass, acoustic guitars, and some synth or some keys. The kick is a normal kick, which I'll play it for you. Then we have the snare. And this snare, if you hear closely, it has this finger snaps as well in it. Now, this drum loop over here, this is a kick and a snare crushed together with lots of distortion. And then we have claps. And we have a tambourine. And now, before we go ahead and listen to the sub, I'd like to say, if you're on your phone speakers, if you're listening through your phone speakers or your laptop speakers, you might not be able to hear this one because this is the sub and the bass frequencies are not audible, usually not audible on speakers like that. So please use headphones, or if you have any desktop speakers or any kind of speakers, just use that. So this is the sub, this is the saw bass, and this is the acoustic guitar, and we have the synths or the keys kicking in from here. Okay, so let's hear the track together. Now, in this track, what I've done is I've done a bit of EQing, nothing very harsh or surgical, just basic EQing. I would dive into a deeper when maybe in a next video. And I do not intend to use this sound for any of my compositions later on because this is royalty free, and I've used this track just for this purpose. Now, to understand what the Now, even before you go ahead and plan on doing sidechaining, the thing which helps me is looking at the waveforms. Now, sidechaining in a very easiest way to understand is ducking out a certain frequency to make room for another element in the same frequency, if that makes any sense. So, and this is basically done and widely done for kicks and bass. Now, as you can see over here in the waveform, when the kick is being triggered, there's a sub bass on this part, right? And there's a sub bass over here with no kick over here. Now, once you put the Trackspacer, this part of the sub bass will be affected. What I mean to say is, or how do we use the sub bass? Now, you go to Wavesfactory Trackspacer, and this is how the interface looks like. It's very simple. You've got a low cut, you've got a high cut, and you've got the amount, which is basically the ratio of how much you want the Trackspacer to duck out when the kick is playing or any instrument are playing. Now, if you click on this small button over here in the right corner, bottom corner, you can see a few more options, which are pan, left, right, which will affect the left, right channels, mid and side, which affects the mids and the sides. Now, the attack, release, and sidechain. Now, this sidechain button, when you activate this, the track on which you have spaced or placed the Trackspacer, that will be muted, and you'll hear only the other track which is not affected by the sidechain, or the sidechain is making room for the track. Okay. Now, in Studio One, I want my Trackspacer on the sub, and how to make it active. The thing is, you turn on the sidechain button over here, and now go to your kick channel, to Synths, click on the plus button, and you can find the Trackspacer over here. Okay. Now, let me set everything to 0. Let me make this all 2 o'clock to understand. Let's loop just 4 bars of it. Now, this is without the sidechain, the Trackspacer activated. And again, if you're hearing on your mobile phones or your laptops, you will just hear the clicky part of the kick and not the and the thickness of these 2 tracks. Now let's hear it without the Trackspacer engaged. Okay, now let's turn on the Trackspacer, and let's follow over here. When I turn on the ratio slowly and gradually, you'll understand what is happening, which part of the frequencies are being ducked out to make space for the kick. Okay, can you hear that?
Can you hear that?
So, the thing is, this portion, which is from, as you can see over here on, it represents which frequency you're working on, from 40 to 100. This is where the bass and the kicks are predominant in this track. So, if I crank the ratio up, you can see how the kick is more prominent. Let's bypass. Turn it on. Now, one of the problems that I faced in making music from bedroom is loads of noises from outside. So I would urge, when you're working on the low end, I'd ask you to use some headphones. And using 380 Pro Sennheiser, and I do not use this for mixing. However, I'd use this for tracking any instruments, guitars, or whilst I'm making or building a track. So this is how the Trackspacer works. Now, usually I would go ahead and make the Trackspacer, or place the Trackspacer on the individual instruments over here, okay, so that it already is prominent before I route all this to a bus track, which I've done over here as well. As you can see, the drums, the bass, the guitars, and the synths, they are all in a bus track. Now, coming to this low cut and the high cut, these are basically options for you to decide which part of the frequencies will be affected. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that for this sub bass, I've actually boosted a lot, 3 dBs of it on 280-ish region, because there's this little sub harmonics, those are going on, and I really wanted to push it, or harmonics, whatever you want to call it. So maybe I do not want those to duck out. So what I can do is I can use the high cut to adjust. Okay. And maybe I do not want anything below 39 or 30 to be affected, so I can adjust that with the low cut as well. Now, going to the advanced panel, this might look a bit complicated, however it's very easy once you understand. Well, everything is easy once you understand. So this attack is how fast the frequencies of the sub bass will duck down, and release being how fast it will go back to its initial stage. Now, for kicks and basses, usually you set a very fast attack and very fast release. It all depends on your track, and if you want to have slow attack and slow release, or slow attack and fast release, that is completely your choice. And that is the beauty of it, because there are no certain rules, but there are guidelines of which you hold hands, and then you can do anything that you want, that you fancy, or if it sounds good to you, it sounds good to you. As simple as that. Okay, now for me, what I like to do is when I find any plugins like this where there are compression going on, or there are part of ratios, what I do is I'd go ahead and crank it full on, because that way I understand what is happening. So let's hear it. Let me put back the attack and release on 12 o'clock, and I've cranked up the ratio fully. So let's hear what happens. You hear the sub bass just fading in, sort of fading in. Now you can do this. You can adjust this fade in and fade out by the release button. The faster the release, the faster it will go back to its initial stage. So you hear that? Now I'd usually like to give very fast attack and very fast release for this. So this is how the Trackspacer works, and it's an absolute brilliant plugin which I came across. And now for this particular track, let's go to the second part, where there are the acoustic guitars and the synth, and we are going to play it for the last 4 bars of this whole track. Now, what I've seen over here for this acoustic guitar and the synths are, they are sort of clashing, because if you hear the sounds together, you can hear how they are sort of overlapping each other. And now I have tinnitus in my ears, and sometimes it gets really, really hard, and it becomes a bit of task when you want to EQ things, and ears starts to hurt, and then you have fatigued in your head and all that. So I'd urge you to work for 45 minutes and then take the rest 15 minutes to be a break, and then come back and work. Trust me, you're doing your ears a favor. Now, what I've done is on the bus of the synth, I've added a Trackspacer because I want my acoustic guitars, the rhythm of the acoustic guitar, to bloom out a little bit. So I've added a Trackspacer on the synth, and I have sidechained that to the acoustic guitars, and these being the parameters on it. Now, usually on bus channels, any sort of EQing, compression, anything that you do, I usually do very subtle and gentle corrections, or my decisions are very subtle. Well, that is what I've learned or heard every other engineer say on innumerable YouTube videos and information that I've gathered, and you can go ahead and crank it up. It is completely your choice if you want to do that. But as I said before, these are the guidelines, sort of. This is where you hold hand and you explore. Feel free to do anything that you want, and if it sounds good to you, if that is how you want your track to sound like, go ahead. There are no hard and fast rules. However, let's hear the acoustic guitar and the synths, okay? Now, when I was EQing the acoustic guitars and the synth, especially for the synth, I saw the synth was very much predominant in this one case region, and to bring out a little bit of harmonics for the acoustic guitars, I've boosted around 500 and 600 a little bit, not too much, and I have cut out a bit of honkiness or the nasally frequencies from the 800-ish region on the acoustic guitars. Now, I really do not want the synth to affect anything above 300-ish region, because that gives a little bit of body of the acoustic guitar for this track. So what I'll do is I'll bring in the fader of the Trackspacer on acoustic guitars, and you'll hear how the acoustic guitar is becoming a bit in your face, okay? We are going to listen to it, both the track solo, and then we will hear it in reference to the track. Okay, let's go. Without, with. Hear how the synth is ducking out a little bit, and it's basically like a glue with the two tracks together. So now let's hear it in reference to the track. The acoustic guitars and the synth kicks in from this bar over here, from the 5th bar. So without, with, you hear that, how the acoustic guitar is becoming a bit more prominent, and the strumming noises are brought to life a little bit, and this actually helps. A little helps a long way, and that is what I've heard. And so this is what the Trackspacer does. This is absolutely brilliant, and I've been very surprised, to say the least, because these things that I do is, as I said before, my go-to is sidechaining, and this Trackspacer does everything for you, everything that you want to do. If you want to hear, if you are accustomed with sidechaining, this actually does the job for you, apart from going on an EQ and then assigning a certain frequency, going on sidechaining, then routing it back to other track. And this is basically that, but there's a dedicated plugin for it, for the sidechaining. So I really, really love it, and I've used that on a track, a heavy rock track, and I've used this on a vaporwave track that I'm working on, as well as lo-fi track which I've released on my channel. It is called Remember Everything. So I'd ask you to go and listen to the songs, to that lo-fi, to understand the bass working. And if you want me to make more videos on sidechaining, I'll do that. And if you have anything that you wish to know, please drop in comments below, and like my channel and subscribe, and please listen to my music and spread good words of my channel, as it really helps me stay motivated. And I hope this video has been of any help to my fellow bedroom producers as well. And in future I plan to do videos about free plugins as well. So if there are any questions, anything that you wish to know, just drop in a comment below. I will try to help you out with the limited knowledge that I have, and maybe I can guide you and give you some links. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and until the next time, I'll see you.